Do you have a bucket list? Have you written down your bucket list? If you don't have a bucket list, is it something you should think about having and should think about writing down? That's what we cover in this episode. And by the way, did anyone bring a cake? I'm Jeremy Klein, and this is Change Work Life. Hello and welcome to the Change Work Life podcast, where we're all about beating the Sunday evening blues and enjoying Mondays again. And welcome to a very special first anniversary edition. Yes, it is a year ago that I started my podcast, and wow, I can't believe it's been a year already. So we've got a really, really special episode lined up. If you've read the About page on my website, you'll know that one of the reasons why I started this podcast in the first place was because my mum died early. She died from cancer at the age of 57. And I'd never got the impression that she'd seemed particularly happy at work, particularly in later years. I just got the impression that she was marking time to retirement and she never made it. And I just didn't want to be in the same place as that. I mean, I've got quite a few more years until retirement, and I just don't want to be in a position where I'm just marking time. So fast forward a few years, and I watched a TEDx talk given by Trav Bell, who also goes under the name of the Bucket List Guy. I'll link to the talk in the show notes, but his message basically sums up why I started this podcast, although he explains it a heck of a lot more eloquently than I do. Trav, welcome to the podcast.
Jeremy, that is honestly, mate, one of the best introductions I think I've ever had. Very, very personal, very meaningful, and it's my absolute pleasure to join you on your anniversary, mate.
Thank you very much, Trav. So first of all, you're known as the Bucket List Guy. And what do you actually do? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Great question. I'm still trying to figure that out, to be honest. I've been running around the world as the Bucket List Guy for about 10 years. Someone actually called me the Bucket List Guy. In my previous business, now we'll go with a quick backstory. So my previous business, I was in the personal fitness training industry. So I did that for 20 years. I founded and franchised a chain of personal training studios. I always loved, one of my highest values is helping others. And I was helping people in their health and fitness, nearly 2 million personal training sessions, not all me and my team, and tens of thousands of clients across Australia. I grew it into a monster. We had a chain of gyms around Australia. Grew it into a monster. I became someone that I didn't like. I went down into a state, I fell into a state of depression. There was a few other things obviously going on at that stage. And I had my own little version of breakdown, kind of before breakthrough. And there's a lot of us coaches and speakers out there who've had a breakdown before breakthrough moment. I'm sure some of your listeners can kind of get that. And I found myself, instead of going on heavy sort of antidepressants and kind of sleepwalking zombie-like through my existence, I found myself going headfirst into personal development seminars, life coaching courses, learning about positive psychology, neuro-linguistic programming, a Carnegie principle, all these sort of things. If they put on a course, I bought it and went it and did it, walked on fire, hugged it out and high-fived it with strangers on weekends. And it was actually in one of these seminars that a friend of mine said, hey, why don't you teach this stuff? And I was relatively shy and not in a good place compared to obviously now. So for me, and around that time, I saw speakers on stage and I thought, if I could do that, that would be like the big domino for me to really break through a lot of the stuff that I wanted to break through. So I summed up the courage. I put on a talk. I invited, nearly had to pay the 40 people that came to my first seminar. And I packaged in all the stuff that I've been learning and my entrepreneurial history as well, and put on a seminar. And it was crap compared to what I do now. I started sharing my list to do before I die. I always had one written down since I was 18. This is about 10 years ago. I started sharing it with the group and inspired the group. And someone at the end of it called me, said, Jo was one of the clients there at the time. She said, how's all this list to do before you die stuff? No one knew this about you. It's like a bucket list. You're like the bucket list guy. And I went, light bulb moment. I went home and registered the domain name, thebucketlistguy.com. And I've been doing that ever since as a speaker, running around the world, doing keynote presentations at conferences. That's allowed me to do my bucket list and allowed others it allowed me to inspire others, and stop living by default, living by design. One of the catch cries is people are dying at 40 and being buried at 80. There's a lot of people sleepwalking through their life. And just like the movie, and this very, very close example, I want to wake people up before they get given a use-by date. That's my mission, man.
When you were in this dark place and you started, rather than going into the medication route, going into the personal development and going into seminars, how were you kind of aware that all this existed and that it was something that might help you?
Because I had a comparison. I knew other people going through depression. Now, my depression was relatively mild compared to other people's. And I just did not I'd done too much health and fitness with clients to realise after so many years that heavy antidepressant drugs were not always the best. It was a Band-Aid, certainly wasn't getting to the cause. So I figured I'm going to get to the cause of this. Why am I on this kind of roundabout? And because I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, and I've been exposed to business seminars and coaches and, books and courses and that. So I've always kind of invested in that, but more on the business coaching side of things. So I've always been curious about knowledge. My real learning happened outside of university, outside of school. That's when I started getting coaches and that sort of thing. And I decided to invest quite heavily in personal development. So I went down that route to, like I said, get to the cause rather than, mask it with a Band-Aid kind of effect in terms of medication.
So let's talk about this concept of a bucket list, because it's one that many people will be familiar with. And I guess when I think about it, I kind of think of it being, I don't know, pick a number, 6 things you do before you die. So I don't know, I'm going to run a marathon. I'm not going to say climb Everest, but yes, skydive, all that sort of thing. I mean, so is that what you mean? That, picking these sort of relatively short transitory experiences where it's just, I do that and then I go back to normal life, and I do that and then I go back to normal life? Or are you talking about something more deeper, more fundamental, more long lasting?
You already know I am, mate. I really encourage, this is sarcasm, I really encourage everyone to be like a full-on extreme Red Bull athlete, all right? So, going out there, you need to, this is how you live a bucket list lifestyle. You've got to base jump. You've got to climb Everest. You've got to do a marathon, an ultra marathon. You've got to do skydive. You've got to do all that in a week, and then we'll qualify you as a bucket lister. No, it's not about any of that. At the end of the day, a lot of people's misconceptions is about what bucket list is. I mean, we're using death as a motivator here, let's be honest. But it's not just about the travel, the extreme stuff. And for a lot of people, that's why people don't embark on this process. It's a lot of the little things that make up the big things. And it's those little things that give you that snowball effect. It gives you the momentum and motivation to smash through the bigger ones. But here's my problem. I say a bucket list is a tangible life plan, where our career plan or our business plan should fit into our life plan and not be the other way around. If you go out there and survey bunches of people about their why do they get up in the morning? Unfortunately, in Australia, somewhat like Britain, it'll be pay off the house, put the kids through school, do a bit of travel when I'm older. I'm like, dude, is that it? We want to have a more expansive why, a more expansive series of end steps. But it's not just about ticking a whole bunch of cool stuff off before you kick the bucket. It's really about how a person reverse engineers every aspect of their life in order to make this stuff come to fruition. And it's the growth of the person on the journey towards these destinations. More importantly, it's about the person that exists on the other side, and that's the person that we don't know yet. That's the person that you and I don't know yet. That's called our potential. And for me, being a coach, I want to help people experience more of their own potential before their time is up. That's the human experience, if you ask me. We do it through the lens of bucket list, through the filter of bucket list. But at the end of the day, I want to help people be happier. The foundation of what I've been teaching all these years is really based on positive psychology, which is the science of happiness. That's how to help people experience more meaning, more purpose, and more fulfillment in their life. That's what it's all about. All right. We put it again through the filter of bucket list. But I did a TED talk a few years ago, which you're aware of, and I went through a 12-letter acronym, a 12-step blueprint called the My Bucket List Blueprint. It's a 12-stepper, so you might actually need, it sounds like AA, you might need a drink afterwards, but I designed it to help people go sort of north, south, east, west in their own brain, and to extract and then articulate this personally meaningful and holistic bucket list, right? And you've seen the TED Talk, and we'll put the link in the show notes. But at the end of the day, it helps people go beyond these extreme kind of, climbing the mountains and driving fast cars and whatever else that people's perceptions of what bucket list is. But, at the end of the day, it's not just 6 things. Just keep on. I've got 350 things on my bucket list. You reckon I don't get pulled out of bed in the morning? Of course I do. It's not when people have a really tangible why for why they go to work every day, why they earn money, what they want to do before their time is up. And when they've got a lot of these things out there, it really does provide a source of inspiration that a lot of people never thought they even had.
There's an awful lot of really, really big concepts there, all very valuable, all very meaningful, but I can feel myself kind of starting from all these massive concepts, starting to feel frankly a little bit overwhelmed. It's like, oh my goodness, I am in this position. I am sleepwalking. I am dying at 40 before I get buried at 80. Oh my goodness, what am I supposed to do with this? I mean, where do you start? What's your sort of first action, your framework, finding your thing, that starting with the finding your thing, and also finding the something that is personal to you and realistic to you, so you don't get distracted by the, I should be running a marathon and climbing Everest and all that.
Here's a really interesting thing. I've been self-employed since I've never had a job in my life. I've always been self-employed. Now, me being self-employed, always learning. I've got an insatiable curiosity for learning. I've always had coaches, gone to seminars, read books, had mentors, done a lot of these, because that's what you do when you're an entrepreneur. You have these external, because there's no one else to kind of help you along. So entrepreneurs, I dare say, are more exposed to external learning like that and getting help than intrapreneurs. That's someone that works for someone else but reckon they can do a better job. When you work for a big corporate, it's quite interesting. Now, case in point, I can go into a keynote to, say, a bank, at their annual conference, or a mortgage broker, or the government, or a school, or a bunch of employees at their annual conference or an event. And I can go out there and say the most basic of personal development principles, unfortunately, and it'd be like I've discovered fire. Oh my God, I'll say like be, do, and have. Never heard of that concept before. Now, I'm being tongue-in-cheek here, but that really surprised me, because when I started speaking, I was doing more public events. But when I started doing corporate speaking, the basics of personal development weren't being learned. Case in point, if I speak to, say, 1,000 people in an auditorium at an event, and I say, okay, guys, who in the room here has a bucket list? Okay. And you'll get, I'll get close to 1,000 people put up their hand. Then I'll say, okay, who has got one actually written down? Like, don't BS yourself. Who's got one actually written down? And it'd be like 20% of the audience. Yeah. But half of that 20%, the 10% will be like, yeah. And I go, now, you guys that have sort of got your hand like that, you really haven't got it written down, have you? You're just putting it up to sort of show that you're showing off, aren't you? Yeah, you're right. Okay, so about 10% of you, mate, I've been doing this for 10 years. And so about 10% of the audience actually have written something like this down. And I'll back it up with who actually writes their goals down. Goals, again, about 10%. Here's the thing. People have got, the simplest of simple things is writing down your goals, and let's call a bucket list a bunch of goals for the time being. If you actually write your goals down, you've got a 42% more likelihood of them actually manifesting, believe it or not. 42%. So you're halfway there, but yet people still don't even do it. So the first step is actually writing some stuff down, literally getting it out of your head and putting it onto paper. That is an absolute revelation for most people.
Can I just pause there and say, okay, so 42, if you write down your goals, you stand a 42% better chance of achieving them, but you've still got to identify what those are. And that is probably an even harder bit. It's, well, what are my goals? What do I want? You know, your middle-class lifestyle, you've got the mortgage, the spouse, the kids, the job. What are my life goals? I mean, how do you even start to ask that question?
Real simple. Okay, let's start with a bucket list. Watch the TED Talk, go through the My Bucket List blueprint. Something will come out, I can guarantee. So probably weird stuff will come out too, so be aware. But here's the thing, when you're writing down your goals, the most important thing is to write down the what, identify the why, and not worry about the how. The what, the why, and don't worry about the how. People don't write down goals, Jeremy, because they overthink the how.
What about the when? Is that something that people should write down?
No, don't worry about it. Just do the basics. See, the when will create inertia between where you are and that goal. Just worry about the what and the why. See, what we're doing is that we're actually punching into Google, being our brain, and deploying the reticular activating system. Reticular activating system is how we sort and generalize information. And it plays a part in neuroplasticity. It helps us really focus in on the things that matter. Because we've got 2 million bits of information that hit us every second, believe it or not. So we've got this RAS that helps us decipher information, helps us filter. At the moment, people aren't punching into Google. And what I mean by that is actually writing stuff down. That's punching it into Google and deploying a search engine called the reticular activating system on what your goals actually are. So just write down, don't think about the when, don't think about the how, just list out all the stuff you want to do before you die, straight up. Don't overthink it, hang on, and don't overthink it, straight up. Because the reticular activating system will do this weird thing where you'll be like, hang on, I wrote that down on my bucket list board. I put down marathon. Why are all these marathoners and people running, like how come I'm in this Facebook group and I'm looking at this online and I'm looking at these documentaries and what's happening here? The universe is suddenly conspiring to make the how come to fruition. The steps are starting to appear because you've punched it into your reticular activating system. That's how it works. Honestly, it's crazy how it works.
This is linked in with the how, but where do you kind of draw the bounds of what's realistic? And I know that's quite dangerous because it starts getting into limiting beliefs and what you perceive to be realistic. But there must be, I don't know, you tell me, is there a cutoff where you just accept that some things aren't realistic? Let's pick an outlandish example. I'm going to go to Mars, for example. And, at the moment, no one's got to Mars.
That could happen. Elon, I follow Elon and that just might happen. So you never know on that one. Let's say you and I playing NBA for the Lakers.
I'm 5'5". Now I know that doesn't mean that it's impossible, but that one's not going to happen. But you can see how you kind of start to get a bit closer and closer. So yeah, I enjoy playing in amateur wind bands, orchestras, that sort of thing. I've discovered jazz in the past few years. Now, what about if my ambition was playing jazz at, Ronnie Scott's in London is a, really well-known jazz club where the best play. Now, that's something which I'm kind of seeing is...
Have you written that down?
No, but that's because it literally just occurred to me.
Well, write it down, man.
If I write it down, is that a commitment? Or...
Is it?
Well,
this is where I go into coach mode and I go, why don't you write it down?
But when does the thing that you write down or the goals become a commitment or something which you kind of put down but you might not achieve?
What gives you the right to not commit to that?
That is a very interesting question.
Do not do yourself, and this is not just us here, this is everyone listening, do not do yourself a disservice of playing small. You would not wish that upon your kids. Be a leader. This, Jeremy, this is about putting your own oxygen mask on first before you can help others. This is a self-leadership exercise here. It's okay to be selfish. You know better than anyone that life is way too freaking short, right? Now, why can't you live fully and die empty? Why can't you go for everything that you truly want to and leave no stone unturned? Why can't you live a full-on, and I will not swear, regret-free life? Why can't you? Who's to say that you can't? What, the government? Your friends? Family? The number one thing, the number one regret that people have is, quote, I wish I lived a life true to myself, not what others expected of me. That's from Bronnie Ware's The 5 Regrets of the Dying. What gives you the right to play small?
Can I just deal with one point? And this comes out from the comments I sometimes see on sort of your discussion boards, particularly around passions and stuff, where people will say, I have no passion, there's nothing that interests me, that sort of thing. Is it basically the case that everyone does have something, you've just got to scratch around to find it? And if that is the case, so what's kind of the first thing you can do to start to get the sort of the creative juices going and start writing your list if you're starting in that position?
Look, yeah, the passion, meaningful, what's going to give you fulfillment, a little bit different to a bucket list. It depends if you want to monetize it or not, as well. So I believe personal passions are all caught up in our bucket list items as well. I go through that 12-step acronym, the blueprint. That really uncovers, if you think about it, that really uncovers a lot of passions within people. But if you want to do it, if you want to monetize it, then that's a different thing. If you want your vocation to be an extension of that passion, then that's a whole other. You've got to be commercially smart as well. Okay.
But leaving aside whether you want to monetize your passion, just people who might be convinced that they're going to try and write down some goals and aren't going to think of anything.
I'd hate to say, but I ask a question with a question. I can't help myself. I am a coach. What are you passionate about?
And if someone turns around and says to you, nothing, then what do? Ask the question again, or
what do you love to do?
And so if you keep on asking the question, eventually something will come out, even if it's maybe someone says, like watching TV in the evening or something, and then that can lead to something.
Yeah, what do you like to watch? What sort of movies do you like? It'll come. You've already, see, in the conversation that we've already had, you already play an instrument, yeah? What instrument do you like? You do that because you're passionate about it. You love doing it. So there must be something there. There's signposts in our life. So if you go through a person's, tabs, what their tabs on Google Chrome, or that you have a look at what they're subscribed to, you have a look at their bookshelf, you have a look at their habits, what they do, on who they hang around, what sort of conversations they have, what sort of conversation they have with their mates, and what are the ones that really light them up. There's indicators everywhere. So you really like dog walking. You really like a woodwind instrument. Fantastic. You love writing. It only takes a few questions to scratch the surface, and then you see, if we found it, and if I was face-to-face with you like I do with a lot of clients, and then I'd see your whole face change, your whole persona. If we started talking about dog walking, you just go, oh, I love it. It's like, oh, there it is.
We've now got a list. We've written the goals, and we've ignored the when and the how, and we focused on the what and the why. I suspect that we could probably go on for days talking about this, but maybe we can talk about sort of the first steps to turning that into a reality.
Okay, I'll look down at that list and go, which one are you going to do now?
And is that something where you would pick the one which appeals the most, which you think is easiest, or which is the most important to you, or is it just you just choose something?
Which one can you commit to now? I'm doing 5 things at the moment, right? Some take a long time. Some take very little time. One is a 6-year work in progress right now. Some take a lot of resources, time and money. Some just take a phone call or a public commitment, or entering something, or paying a deposit on something. and then it's done. What are the immediate first steps on the things on your list? And people will be able to identify it. An immediate first step is not a Google search. An immediate first step is actually taking action. So what does that look like? It's publicly declaring it. Like I said, paying a deposit. It's lining up a meeting. It's launching something. It's, a real commitment.
And how do you identify what the first step is? I mean, if you talk about, your thing, which you're saying it's a 6-year commitment, so that must be broken down into a series of steps. How do you identify what is the first step to take and then the next step to take?
Well, give me an example. What's something on your bucket list? You've seen my TED Talk. What's something on your bucket list?
I haven't actually. Well, I saw the TED Talk, but I didn't really put together a bucket list afterwards.
Oh, my God. Oh, mate.
I know.
All right. Well, what's the first step? Let's say we'll go with the marathon example. What's the first step in doing a marathon?
See, my brain has immediately come up with 3 different answers there. One is applying for it. So kind of that's the commitment part. So then you're kind of like, right, I am doing a marathon and I might have never run before, but I'm applying for it.
What does apply mean? Does that mean enter?
Yeah, enter.
Like you've paid money?
Yeah. So go for, the London Marathon or the New York Marathon or Boston Marathon or the Melbourne Marathon or whatever it is and just enter.
Yep.
So that's one step you could do. Another step, if you've never been running before, is go and buy some running shoes. Actually, if it was me, it'd probably be first go onto Google, which you said that's not how you start, but go onto Google to research running shoes and then buy some running shoes. Or it would be, okay, well, I'm going to try and run around the block, for half a mile. So there's 3 potential first steps.
What would be wrong with doing all those 3 right now? Nothing. But the real commitment is actually entering. When there's some hurt money down. My other thing is getting a bucket list buddy involved, an accountability partner. So hook up a friend, dob in a friend, get some commitment, get some social pressure, and do it together. If that falls through, just do it anyway. The funny thing about it is being in the weight loss kind of industry or personal training industry for over 20 years, the best thing to help a person lose weight is actually to tell everyone on Facebook that you're going to do it. Then you have a lot of social pressure and people will die for recognition. Unfortunately, that's just how we're built. A lot of people are built that way. Sorry, not everyone, but a lot of people are.
How do people get themselves to the position where they're going to do that? Because I can see there's going to be a lot of reluctance to telling lots of people. And that reluctance is going to stem from a fear of failure, I'd imagine, and a fear of having to face up to people. So you've kind of got to get to the position where you're brave enough.
With every goal, everyone's different, right? It would be presumptuous to overlay my map of the world and my goals onto you and vice versa and us onto someone else. When the why is strong enough, the how will work itself out. When someone wants to do something really bad, they will find a way. It's not a matter, and here's the thing, mate, and I've got years and years and years of people unbelieving the story that they've led themselves to believe about themselves. So they've gone against the grain. I've had people, I'm not a runner. I've never been a runner. I was the fat kid in school to then doing ultra marathons because something happened where they've just flipped the script. When the why is strong enough in a person, the how will work itself out. A person has to be internally motivated, internally inspired in order to do something. All right, it's not about you and me trying to externally motivate them to do something. That people will do things for different reasons. Enter a marathon, no, versus someone else that it's always been on their list to do before they die for years and years. And we don't know really the backstory, but people really get out of their comfort zone when we're talking about bucket list. That gives them, the most common thing that myself and we've got now bucket list coaches in 21 countries around the world. The most common thing that we'll hear is, "Thank you for giving me permission to dream again." It's really weird, dude. It's really weird. It's like we're so busy being busy that we're so busy on our to-do list that we forget about our bucket list until it's too late. So when people do programs, whether it be with one of our coaches or myself, or it's helping them take time out of their life to work on their life, it's about separating their daily to-do list from their bucket list. Because I can guarantee that people will get busy on their to-do list and it's not until something traumatic or dramatic happens to them or a loved one that they suddenly reprioritise in a heartbeat. And when they reprioritise in a big, big way. I want people to reprioritise or just prioritise the things that they truly want to do in their life over and above what they do for work, not just for them, but also for their family. And it's not just about the stuff that you want to do, it's the stuff that you want to do collectively, with your family as well. So we've got a family bucket list. My partner and I, Tracy and I, we've got a couples bucket list. And I've also got my personal one and she's got her personal one.
Just to finish up on the question of kind of time, and I suppose by time I kind of mean bandwidth, because everyone seems to be busier and busier and busier.
Yeah.
And I know that there are people who are listening to you who are going to think, yes, he's absolutely right. I really should be doing this, but I've got so much going on in my head at the moment, I just can't think when to do it. So leaving aside there's only so many times you can say, yes, you should be doing this. Yes, you should be doing this. But what's maybe I keep on trying to bring it back to quick wins, but just something that someone can do to make themselves realize that they do have time to take this step back and do this sort of thing.
Going to the quick win is just commit to something. This is about choosing happiness. It's about choosing the things that you want to do and making time for that. That's how we get the quick positive reinforcement, the quick win. I want people to be able to do that. Look, people, unfortunately, a lot of people listening to this may need a breakdown before a breakthrough moment, a confusion before clarity moment. Maybe they're not. They haven't drawn the line in the sand. It's very tiresome trying to motivate people if they don't want to be motivated. But when I talk, normally when I do keynote presentations and that sort of thing, my job is to wake them up and disrupt. I don't care. Life is way too short. I've got too many examples of cancer diagnosis, of my best mate dying. You've got your own examples. I can guarantee everyone has got an example where life's been cut way too short. How many examples do we need for us to actually wake up and reprioritise? And if you need to be hit over the head 10 times with that message, then so be it. Some people only need one. Some people don't need any. But this is everyone's life, not mine. The heart of why I do what I do is not just about waking people up. Mate, depression is going up. Suicides are going up. Anxiety is going up. The overprescription of antidepressants is going up. Cancer is going up. We've got this thing now, Google it, called the loneliness epidemic. It's the effect of social media that's now come to fruition. It's called the loneliness epidemic. We know through COVID-19 what a pandemic is, real clear on that. So an epidemic, not too far away. Loneliness epidemic. Now, with all that evidence, and it's getting worse and worse and worse, people are more disengaged at work. They're turning over jobs, careers, businesses like never before. Their attention spans are getting worse and worse and worse. Their commitment, their loyalty getting worse and worse. So I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but these are actually all societal signs that we're not in a good place. Then you throw COVID on top of it. The mental well-being of the planet is not in a good place. Not just because I'm doing it, not because our coaches are out there doing this stuff as well and doing programs with corporates and individuals and families, but I'd like to think that the 10 years of evidence of us actually out there doing this bucket list work for people, this is arming people with real tools to help them reprioritise on that and go against the grain and get into a happier place. Positive psychology is the science of happiness, and that's really what we're out there practicing and getting people to engage in before they get given a use-by date themselves. Go out there, live your bucket list before it's too late. It's real simple. Live a regret-free life rather than a regret-full life. Choose happiness. Don't buy into the statistics, let alone don't be one. I've been through depression. People have had their own battles with this stuff. When is the time? When is going to be the time that you actually can change? When is it? Like how many more signs, how many more signposts, how many more things have to happen in a person's life, in our lives, for us to get the freaking message. Seriously. If people hate me, so be it. But I'm not here to be a motivational speaker, man. It's just speaking reality. I've been doing this stuff for 10 years. It is in my bones. I want to help people, live their life before it's too late. And not just them, but for their families, their kids. Be the example for your kids to follow, for God's sake. If you don't do it for yourself, do it for your kids.
You mentioned COVID. I mean, this episode comes out sort of beginning of October. We're recording this end of July when lockdowns are hopefully coming to an end, but some coming back again. But I think COVID is going to be a wake-up call for people. I mean, it might be their breakdown, sort of not like a breakdown necessarily, but it's going to be the moment, I think, when people start really to reassess what they want.
Yeah, people are recalibrating more than ever before. They're recalibrating on what is their true north on happiness. They're adapting, they're innovating, they're collaborating like never before, and we've been inundated with our bucket list coach inquiries, and we've got so many people have been laid off, and they're trying to find, I'm not really that happy doing what I'm doing, and life is really short, and we're getting nightly reminders of that on the news. It is a crazy moment in time. What do? Do you put your hands up and be at the mercy, be at the effect of what's going on, or do you flip the script and start to stop living by default and live by design? Get at the cause of your own happiness
and start to recognise that there is the alternative, which I think people are now. They've been forced to recognise that working from home is an option. Not doing the commute is an option. Doing something different is an option.
The big thing is we've all got control over how we think and how we interact with society and what we choose. You've got the power of choice. Maybe this is a reminder. Draw the line in the sand. Be a victor, not a victim.
Fantastic. Travis, this has been absolutely awesome. Really, really, absolutely fantastic stuff.
I'm actually holding back on swearing, this, because you told me I couldn't swear. So
I appreciate that.
I'm all hot. I've just come back from the gym. I'm all hot and angry now. I'm ready to go. Come on, society. Come on, COVID. Let's go.
But you've mentioned one book, 5 Regrets of the Dying. I mean, are there any other books which you can recommend, either people who want to find out more about this or?
It's dog tagged. It's 5 Regrets of the Dying by Bronnie Ware. So that's a really good one. She was a palliative care nurse hanging out at old people's homes, and a blog of interviewing them all became a book, a best-selling book, and she's got the 5 Regrets of the Dying. So one of them is, I wish I let myself be happier. It's pretty crazy. I wish I had the courage to express my feelings. I wish I made more time for my friends. The other one that I'd love to is Happier by Tal Ben-Shahar. This was basically given to me by a friend because I was a miserable prick there at one stage, and she said, "Hey Trav, every time I catch up with you, you're just dumping on everyone. So here's a book on happiness." Tal Ben-Shahar, positive psychologist, worked under arguably the father of modern day positive psychology, Martin Seligman. In that book, he's got a process called the MPS process. 3 intersecting circles in a Venn diagram, the M, P and S. What gives you meaning, what gives you pleasure, and what are your strengths? And in the middle is your calling. So I did that exercise and it said motivational speaker. I'm like, really? Is that my calling here? So yeah, that was one of the signposts for why I do what I do. And it's a reflection of my values, of course, but that's a really good resource. Happier by Tal Ben-Shahar. And if people haven't seen my TED talk, it's called Life's Too Short by Trav Bell. And I want everyone who's listening, Jeremy, to this podcast, I want them to send you their bucket lists, all right? When they go through the blueprint, I want them to send you their bucket list, and then you're going to send them to me. That's what I want for everyone. There's got to be accountability here, folks. It's not just about learning stuff. It's about putting it into real action.
And then where's the best place that people can find you and get in touch with you?
Go to www.thebucketlistguy.com. That's my main website. Then we've got, if you're interested in becoming a bucket list coach, that's bucketlistcoach.com. Or you can find me on social media. Sadly, I do most of my work on Instagram these days. Or, I've got LinkedIn and and what have we got? Facebook and what is it? LinkedIn and Facebook. I'm Trav the Bucket List Guy, and I don't even know what I am, on Instagram on bucketlistguy.travbell. There you go.
Fantastic. I will link to all those. Trav, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure, Jeremy. Cheers, man.
Wow. Hope you enjoyed that interview with Trav Bell. My goodness, I could certainly feel the passion radiating off him. I mean, he is so into his topic. It's really quite something. I've kind of toyed with the idea of, having like a sort of live coaching session on this podcast. So, having someone who kind of coaches me. Having had that experience with Trav now, I'm not sure that it's put me off, but it has made me realise that it could be quite an uncomfortable experience, because he really does delve into things and ask you questions which you've really got to think about, and it's quite tough. I really do urge you to check out Trav's TEDx talk, where he goes into more about how you go about defining your own bucket list and his acronym for what the bucket list stands for. It's definitely well worth a watch. And his point about writing things down as well, he said that if you write something down, you are 42% more likely to achieve it just with the act of writing it down. I don't know what that increases to when you go onto Facebook and tell all your friends that's what you're doing, but I'm guessing that the percentage increases radically again. So just, small things which can really improve your chances of getting something done. There'll be a link in the show notes to Trav's TEDx talk, as well as the links to where you can get hold of him and the resources we talked about. And you'll find all those at changeworklife.com/56 for episode 56. So you heard Trav's call to action at the end there. You send me your bucket list and I will send those on to him. So check out the TEDx talk for how to go about doing it. And I look forward to receiving them. And also, if you found this useful, if you have found previous episodes of this podcast useful, it would be amazing if you would leave a review either on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts from. Reviews really do help other people find the show. So please do go ahead and leave your review. So there you go, that's 1 year of the Change Work Life podcast already. I cannot believe that it has already been a year. It really has gone incredibly quickly. I've absolutely loved interviewing the guests I've interviewed. I've met some amazing people. I've learnt a huge amount myself, and I hope it's been helpful for you as well. It's been brilliant. I've certainly got no plans to bring it to an end anytime soon. And if you have any suggestions for guests or topics that you'd like me to cover in future episodes, then do drop me a line. You'll find there's a contact form on the website, changeworklife.com/contact. And I would love to hear from you. Here's to the next year. Well, here's to next week, where we've got another great interview, and I can't wait to see you then. Cheers. Bye.